This is a presentation on musicality in poetry. For the 4 poems examined were an excerpt from Paradise by John Milton, written in blank verse, My Last Duchess by Robert Browning, written in a couplet, The Tragical History of Dr. Frost by Christopher Marlowe, written in blank verse, and an essay on criticism by Alexander Pope, written in a couplet. This is a video of a voiceover of poems. Refer back to this video so you can hear them read aloud. First, Paradise Lost by John Milton. I did not notice much musicality in this poem, and because there was not a rhyming pattern. The punctuation was not consistent. Some lines were jammed and others weren't. This poem was written in iambic pentameter, which I think helped establish a rhythm and musicality, but I don't think it was very evident. And I think this poem has a lot of subtle musicality. My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. The poem consists of rhyming couplets. The last line breaks the rhyming pattern, which I thought interesting. It is made up of both in stopping lines and in jam lines, and the punctuation within the lines caused a slight pause, which I think affected the rhythm, and I do not think this was effective. The rhythm of the poem made it read fast, and I think that when I heard it, it was read fast, which I did not really like, and it was, again, written in iambic pentameter, which established a rhythm that could be heard throughout the reading. The Tragical History of Dr. Frost by Christopher Marlowe. I think the music in this poem is harder to recognize than the previous one. There is no rhyming pattern, and also the way the words float off the tongue differs from line to line. I feel like some parts of the poem were read fast and others were read slow. This has to do with the punctuation. Every line was an end-stopping line, but there's also punctuation within the lines, which slowed down the rhythm, which I did not like because it kind of messed up the rhythm and music of the poem. An Essay on Criticism by Alexander Pope. This poem had end-stopping lines, which I think helped with the rhythm. It established a pause at the end of each line, not randomly in the middle of the lines, and I think that helped a lot with the musicality. There was a rhyming pattern. The whole poem is written in rhyming couplets, and to me this helps with musicality. Our ears pick up on rhymes, making the poem have more of a musical sense. To me, this poem has a very profound rhythm and musicality to it, which I liked, and again, it was written in iambic pentameter, which adds a certain musical element to the poem. My conclusions. Poems that rhyme have more of a musical aspect to them because for me, rhyming is a large part of music, and I think that rhyming in poems makes the music more profound. Meter in poetry also helps establish a musical element to the poem. It establishes a repetition within the poem and allows the poem to become a rhythm and have a certain beat to it. And to me, poems with end-stopping lines are more effective at establishing musicality because it causes a brief break at the end of each line, which I definitely think helps. And I think that Pope and Browning's poems had a lot more musicality, and it was more distinct in that the musicality added to the element of the poem, whereas I did not think in Marlowe and Milton's poems that music was a main focus or an element of the poem. And finally, my thoughts on the poem. To me, two poems have to me the poems that have rhyme and music in them, it really helps because I can hear it better. And poems that are end-stopped have more of a rhythm and musicality than ones that don't. And like I said before, Browning and Pope's musicality stands out more. I think that Marlowe's poem has the least profound musicality in it, just because there is no rhyming pattern, and there is enjambment and end-stopping lines, and I think that messes up the flow. And if a poem wants to establish a lot of musicality, I think to me flow is really important. You don't want to have some parts read fast or some parts read slow because of that punctuation.